Hey there.
Hi,
Morning.
how are you?
Excuse me. Pretty good, thank you. Yourself?
Good. Thanks for willing to do this.
Sure thing.
So I could just jump around then with roles in your career.
Yeah, sure. And hopefully I can remember enough to answer intelligently.
Mhm.
Uh, as I mentioned to you in my message, I don't really. It's more the process for me, and I've been at it for 40 years. So it's
Right.
the IMDb lists like 400 credits or whatever. There's a lot more than that.
Yeah.
So there's going to be cat. Whenever I start to speak, the youngest assumes I'm speaking to her, so she comes up on my lap and
Okay.
walks in front of the screen. So you'll get cattail passing here. She's now kneading my lap in preparation for lying on it. So anyway, yeah, there's lots and lots of projects over 40 years. So I don't remember all of them, and some of the ones that I do remember more distinctly aren't ones that are necessarily the ones that fans
Yeah.
think of. But I had a really fun time or an adventure on it, or so that's the one that sticks with me. So there may be some titles you mentioned that I go draw blank.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. So the first thing I wanted to ask was back when you were still up in Canada, do you remember the job that got you into ACTRA?
Into ACTRA? Oh, into ACTRA. Good question. I'm glad you know the name of the union up there. Um, Let me see. That's a good question. Actually, it might have been the cartoon series. Were they union? I had been doing on camera work up there, but I'd been doing non union
Okay.
camera work. Those were the days of straight to video
Yeah.
films had started. The technology was still fairly new that they could now shoot on video as opposed to film. So a lot of small companies and the Canadian content rules were just beginning. They were in their infancy. So a lot of Canadian companies had begun shooting low budget films. And I was fortunate enough to do quite a few, four or five, excuse me, but they were not ACTRA. But I did do some work on a few other shows, smaller roles. And I can't recall if that got me my ACTRA card or if it was the Mask series
Yeah.
that got me my actor card, because that, although it filmed or rather recorded in LA, it was a French, a Canadian, and an American production. Three countries were involved, and it was done under the auspices of ACTRA. They did it under the Canadian contract.
Mhm.
So I don't know if that's where I got it from, or if I got it from some of the on-camera work that I'd done at that time. And I've lost the name of a couple of the shows that I did that were being done by, at that time, a fairly large company in Canada, and did some small roles for them. Fred, I can't remember exactly. I remember getting my equity card. I remember the show that was, I think, but I don't remember exactly which one got me the actor card.
Well, some of those shot on video films that you're in, you can still watch part of them on YouTube, like Shock Chamber.
Yes, oh my goodness. Yes, you're right. Yeah, they just started to become available. I had managed to, pre the internet being as vast as it was, I had been hunting for those things, and had a few on, in the original video packaging that they came in. One moment, I'll share with you. So come off the wall. A couple of
Yep.
that was one of them. I played an American soldier uh, who I think he was a veteran of Vietnam, and this was
Yep.
Trilogy of Terror. I played three different roles of three criminal brothers of varying degrees of dangerousness, if that's an actual word. I'll put these where the cat can't get them. They'll end up on the floor, right, Minnow? But yeah, I was doing those on camera shows up there. And Shock Chamber was the gentleman who directed us now passed, Steve DeMarco, passed away. But when I auditioned for him, he was looking for a much bigger, more dangerous guy. I'm not a big guy. But I noted that he had kind of a demeanor where he wasn't from New York, but he kind of carried himself like a guy would. Like, so when I was auditioning, I thought, I'm going to imitate. I think he's trying to be tough in his own way, trying to come across. So I'm going to sort of imitate him. And he went, hey, you're not very big, but you got that thing, you know? So he did a lot of close-ups of me. And as it turns out, when you're acting, I was doing a lot of stage comedy. Improvisational comedy was, and sketch comedy was primarily paying the bills for a while. But on camera, the way I lit, because of my eyes being set in a bit, whatever. Anyway, I tend to film a little like I'm a little more dangerous than I am. Mm-hmm. That's just how the camera finds me. That's how it sees me. So anyway, yeah, so Shock Chamber was one of the first, or may have been the first lead I got. And then that led to these other made-for-video films, one of which Shock Chamber Steve also directed, and the others were directed by other folks up there. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it was all great. And that's really what got me to LA, was that the cinematographer, might have been the one on Shock Chamber, was speaking to me and asked me what my agent was. Now, I'd gotten into the business later than many, and I had not come up through the school system. In Canada, it's much like Britain, where you're expected to have graduated from certain academies of acting in order to become a legitimate actor, you'll see. I had not taken that path. As always, I had taken my own skewed path, as I always do. But he recommended me to an agent in Toronto who, on his word, signed me, which blew me away. They were a really good agency. They got the mask auditions. I think only 2 agents got the auditions for a cartoon series called Mobile Armored Strike Command Mask. Yep. And that I auditioned for. I'd been doing a little bit of voice work to augment my income up in Canada, doing commercials primarily, because there wasn't really an animation industry. Anyway, I got the lead in, I think, 2 characters, and came to LA and ended up with 8 characters and 65 or 75 episodes of that cartoon. And that's what got me into Los Angeles. So it's, you know, it's all a pathway. Mm-hmm. You never know. The main thing is to keep working. The more you work, the more people will see you, and the more those chances can come up of somebody putting in a kind word for you, or somebody noticing your performance and mm-hmm. casting you in something.
Well, I know, of course, when you did get to LA, you got to still be part of that really early anime scene before people really knew what it was.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't know what it was. I got into doing some dubbing, but it was primarily we were dubbing just foreign films and foreign cartoons. There was a Mexican company, I've lost the name, but they were doing a lot of work in some of the studios I was in, getting their cartoons dubbed into English so that they could sell them internationally. So anime was just making little visits. Certain little projects would come up that we go, that's odd. That one's just, those are a little bit different thematically, and the drawings and whatever. There had been things like Speed Racer and early right. Gigantor and early shows that predated me. But the anime hadn't caught on, of course. Yeah, I got to be there at the beginning as anime began to catch hold with American audiences, and I guess European English-speaking audiences is perhaps the right way to put it. I was there at the beginning of that, yeah. And we didn't know we had a monster by the tail for a while.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember who you met first in that whole community?
Oh gosh, no. I mean, I met a lot of folks around the same time. I had a Saban. The ones who did Power Rangers. Saban was doing the music for Mask. Okay. Because they were primarily music people when they first started. But they had some footage that they'd purchased, which I think was original. I think it was Mighty Morphin footage. And they had this idea, you know, we can do something with this. So they actually called Deke, who was the company in charge of Mask, and said, do you have some actors you can send over? We don't know actors. We're a music company. You know, we'll pay them a couple $100. We want to experiment with trying to put voices in. So I was doing early dubbing work like that. And when Saban's began to take off, they said, you were pretty good at that, even though you were new to it. Would you like to do more? So I got into dubbing some stuff at Saban, and I mean, at that point, I met Michael McConaughey, I met Richard Epcar, I met Alan Stern, I met, pretty much, if you look at everybody who's been at it since the 80s, they pretty much were all in that circle at that time. So I met all of them within the first 2 years, between 85 and 87, 88. I pretty much met everybody one after another in that community. And then I was working for a gentleman named Dave Mallow, who's not active right now, but I was working with Dave and we got along really well. And he said, I need somebody to help me direct. He was doing directing casting. I think Steve Kramer had helped him get in and started, and asked me would I be interested in doing some directing as well, which I was. So I started to co-direct projects with him at a studio called Intersound, which is now gone. But Intersound did a lot of dubbing work, both work into Spanish and into English as anime took off. So all those folks were all part of the community, and met them all back then, 30 odd years ago, 34 years ago, or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've talked to most of them at this point. Back when I was talking to Michael, he said that those really early days doing anime were so crazy in the studio because people were just like lying around sleeping, and you had people were like waking them up when it was their time to record.
Yeah, we tended to, well, a lot of things. It was new to everybody.
Yeah,
and it also, of course, the technology was not the same as it is now, so it was much more difficult work to do because you didn't have a computer to guide you as to when to start to speak in order to put it in sync, and you're put on tape, so they couldn't move anything. You had to be exacting. And for some reason, I guess because it was new to everybody, sometimes they bring in a group of actors at one time. So hence, as Michael was saying, you might be snoozing in a corner somewhere, catching a cat nap, and they say, oh, your character's up. Go, oh, okay, whatever, great. They hired me for 5 hours to do my 1 hour's worth of work. So I'm happy to sit around and wait. I'm getting paid. Mm-hmm. Before they and I began directing too, before we kind of got into more of a science of how to get the most out of each actor and economically and as well. But in those early days, but it was a lot of fun because that's how nowadays you tend to work alone. And that is how I met a lot of those people, was particularly on the Walla sessions, where all the bit roles, they'd bring in me and Mike McConaughey and Mikey Sorich and 4 or 5 other people, and some of the ladies, Barbara Goodson or whoever. I'm naming names from the Wayback Machine, and we'd all be in there. Half of them, most of them, more than half, in my case, I hadn't met before. So suddenly you're working with all these people and you're joking with them and having fun and whatever, and friendships formed and relationships formed from those days, which were adventuresome and fun.
Mm-hmm. And I did ask this to Wendy Lee and both the Epcars and some other people. Did you have any highlighted memory of Lisa Michaelson before she passed?
No, I didn't know Elisa that well. I know Greg, her husband, but I'd only met Elisa 3 or 4 times.
Okay.
And it was always in passing. We never seemed to work in the same projects. So I did not know her enormously well. No, I remember meeting her at Saban in the hallway when she was walking down the hallway with Wendy and a couple of other ladies, and they were all laughing and joking. How do you do? But no, I don't have any memories of working with her.
Were you ever close with Bridgette Hoffman?
Bridgette Hoffman? Yeah. Is Bridgette passed?
No, she just...
Oh.
She primarily works in ADR for major film and TV now. Yeah.
I knew Bridgette I knew her a little bit from looping or dubbing. I had hired her, in fact, to dub with me before she got going and before she got married and before she and her husband got busy in the looping world.
Yep.
I had worked with her in dubbing a little bit, and then I worked with her more in looping world than I did in dubbing world. Mm-hmm. Once she started to loop, as happens with a lot of actors, they get out of, because it's better paying, they get out of dubbing. For a good part of the 90s, I wasn't dubbing. I can remember having to turn down work. I can remember Richard Epcar offered me work and me saying, I don't have time to dub, dude. And it puzzled some people, but I was trying to, and the late Scott Page couldn't figure it out either. And I tried to explain to them, looping pays the regular, approximately the same rate as a day player on camera gets with residuals. So you don't turn that down. So I got very active in Looping World, and that's where I knew Bridgette primarily, and her husband was in Looping World.
Mm-hmm. So I know some pretty early anime credits for you that I still like a lot. Iczer One. I don't know if you remember that at all.
Sorry, which?
It's called Iczer One.
Oh, Iczer One, I do remember, because I think I directed Iczer.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was one of my first forays into anime as a director. I had been doing some anime for the late Kevin Seymour and some other folks. The late Kevin Seymour came to the Intersound studios. He and a partner had been primarily, they were super into anime early, but they were selling items. They weren't directing dubbing, but rather selling, posters and videos, I guess, or whatever. And he and the partner got the idea of what would happen if we dubbed some of these projects ourselves into English. But he had no experience in it. I was, not a cold, but LA air. My nose tends to run sometimes. He brought the project to Intersound, and I was kind of like a house director at Intersound. When they got English language projects, after a couple of projects working with them, a trust was established, and I would do a lot of their work. So they introduced me to Kevin, and I remember doing Iczer 7, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I forced Kevin to direct somebody. He was very shy. But I actually had a looping gig I had to go to, a union looping gig. And I said to Kevin, there was I think a young girl there of 14 or 15. I said, you can direct her, dude. I'll get it started. And you can finish the last hour. I've got to go. And he was so terrified at the idea of telling somebody what to do. But I'm glad I did it, because he got his confidence and obviously went on to direct a lot of projects on his own, very well-known projects.
Yeah.
So,
well, I know
Iczer was fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, then one of your very first leads was in Zillion as JJ.
Oh yeah, Zillion. Yeah. I think Tom Weiner was directing. I think Zillion. Yeah, I only did one or two. My voice is actually a little low for the character.
Yeah.
Because I think he was a teenager, wasn't he, or a young guy, 20 years old. Now, you have a very low voice. I've always had, since I was a teenager, I'd never really, my voice broke like a lot of boys do, but it did it early and then dropped. And it's not a super low voice, but it's never sounded teenager-like. Yeah. It's always sounded adult since the time I was 12 or 13. So for Zillion, I really had to push him hard. I can't remember what he sounded like, but I know I had to push him pretty hard to get him youthful. And I think the owner, who's the producer of the series, now I lost his name, he's also no longer with us, who Tom was working for. Anyway, I think in later shows I was replaced, I think, by a younger actor. But yeah, I did do Zillion, which again, I think Tom Weiner directed way back when. I don't remember anything about the show. I just remember the struggle to make him young. The part I remember.
Well, then you got to be the big bad villain, the main villain in the Outlanders.
Oh, okay. I remember the credit, but I don't remember the role.
Okay.
In Outlanders, you'd have to remind me. Yeah, I don't remember the role, but I'm glad I got to be a villain.
Yeah. And then I know you got to play multiple characters in Ninja Scroll. Oh,
Ninja Scroll. Okay, yeah. That may have been something Kevin directed. I can't recall, or I don't know. Maybe I directed it. I don't know. Too many decades have gone by and too many projects to remember exactly all of them. I have a sleeping cat on my lap, by the way.
Okay.
Her head on my arm, very contented right now. So she's happy. She's sure I'm just talking away to her, telling her stories so she can sleep. But yeah, I remember the project name, but again, very difficult. As I was saying to you before, it's very difficult to remember specific roles for a lot of the projects because the IMDb lists about 360, and then in other credits, they have another 40 or 50, but those 400 credits don't actually represent the full amount of work I've done. There's a lot more. What the IMDb picks up is whomever it is that's listing it, they're checking for credits. And if you're credited, they try to put it on, but there's a lot of projects you do where they just don't bother with credits. And I used to write all those down and, you know, store them or whatever. And I gave up around the year of 2000 or 2002. I just stopped writing it down and thought, whatever. I've got enough credits to send to a potential producer or director so that they'll know I'm real. I don't need to keep track of everything I've done anymore. So, but it's in the thousands as far as, you know, if you were to look at all the different shows, if you included looping, I'm sure it's 1,500 or more or something. So it is hard to remember specific ones, and 40 years in the business. So it is hard to remember all of them.
Well, it would be pretty later on, but one of my favorite roles of yours was it's in a one-shot OVA called Fake, where you and Terrence Stone were a couple.
Oh yeah, Terrence reminds me of that sometimes. I had forgotten about it, but he jokes with me about it when I see him, and he reminded me about it. Yeah. I don't remember a lot of the details about it, but it may have been the only time or one of the first times that I ever played a gay character. So that was interesting. And Terry's also straight as I am. So for both of us, it was like, okay, so how do we, how do we approach this with honesty and with sincerity and you know, and honor the role, et cetera, et cetera. So it was fun. You know, it's always fun as an actor to step outside of your normal comfort zone of what you normally are thought of or cast for. And if somebody thinks of you for something that wouldn't normally play, it's actually I think very cool. Yeah. You know, okay, how do I find my way into that role and make it real and honest and make it so that the viewers go, okay, I believe that, you know. So hopefully you did when you watched it. Hopefully you believe Terrence and I. Yeah, I don't remember the details of that, but I do remember that role.
Well, in terms of bigger anime characters that you've played, who do you think that you personally relate the most to, if there is anybody?
Oh gosh, you know, it's really more recent ones in the way of anime that I would remember. Is it Lala Kill, or there was a fellow with a
Kill, yeah.
He's the masked doctor, mad doctor guy. Is that Lala Kill?
That's Durarara.
Durarara. Okay, yeah. For some reason, I just got a kick out of him. So he's kind of comes to mind. I think because he had such a strange point of view.
Right.
Of the world and how he approached it, that I kind of remember him. For some reason, I remember, is it Helsing?
Yeah.
The butler.
Yep.
Yeah. For some reason, he comes to mind too in my memory, and I'm sure there's other ones that Stoner, and I don't know why he wasn't a big role. Eureka 7.
Yep.
But there was a guy named Stoner, and like, I'm an ex-hippie. I mean, I'm a 60s kid. I had hair down to here, and, you know, I went to San Francisco and Haight-Ashbury in 68, and, you know, traveled and hitchhiked for you. So I kind of liked Stoner because he was like a modern day. I mean, it would be a different name for a young person these days. They wouldn't be called a hippie, but he was kind of that school where he was just kind of a laid back dude. Who wasn't going to let the world phase him and whatever. That's what I got from him. So for some reason, I kind of related to him, and I liked that I got to play him a little bit differently than a lot of the anime characters are very straight ahead.
Yeah.
You know, I will find them and I will kill them all because of what they did. You know, it's very linear, straight ahead stuff. The more fun things for me are when they are a little off. Mm-hmm. When they're a little out of the ordinary. I was just working for Jonathan Klein recently. I don't know if you know who Jonathan is. Actually, I can't talk about it because I signed an NDA.
Okay.
But for a game. But with Jonathan, I had done some very interesting anime that is very obscure. There was one where I was he just played me some of it too, and I've forgotten the titles. But one, I was this very old man who wanted to commit suicide, and there was a young kid and a middle-aged person who also wanted to commit suicide. It was our misadventures as we attempted to do this. So very dark and very different. But I really thought it was cool because it was so, I don't know if it was really children's entertainment. I think it was really more for a mature audience. I think in the end, it turned out we were all ghosts and we already were dead, but we were sort of reliving it or something. I can't recall the details, but those are ones that moments. I may not remember the entire storyline, but I can remember the character, or I remember moments of them that struck me, and I went thinking, "This is really interesting." I really want to find the core of this character, and you always want to deliver an honest performance, but there's times where you really feel like I want to dig into this deeper and bring out the pathos or whatever it is that's in that character. The more challenging, the more fun. Even as you get older, you want to be challenged. Mm-hmm. You have your acting skills challenged and have to go inside a little deeper to find things. Like, if you have a character who's crying or weeping, or who's had a huge injustice done to them, and anything that really gets into the core, that you can then bring that out into the performance, is fun and challenging. And it's really what the art is about of acting, I think. Mm-hmm. I began as a stage actor, and that it's the same honesty you want to bring to it. So anyway, those are characters I remember. It may not be in big games. I remember Psycho Mantis, his game, not anime, primarily because people reminded me of him. I didn't know, because I don't even own a television set, and haven't for many years. And I don't play interactive games, etc. I like books a lot. Yeah. I tend to do a lot of reading, and I do use the internet a lot, but for research and fun and watching videos, of every type. Anyway, I was at a convention for Mask under the auspices of, it was like a retro convention. So I was there for Mask, and people kept reminding me about Psycho Mantis. This is about 2007 or 8. And I went, Psycho Mantis? And then I realized, and when I got on the internet, I found out he's on the top 10 list of villains. Yeah. For a lot of people still. After all these years. I think he debuted in about 98 or 99. So him, I sort of went back into my memory to remember more about, and I've since done him for car commercials. Yep. If you're aware that, yeah, very odd to be hired to do car commercials in Psycho Mantis, but he's not anime, of course. But he's a character I certainly remember, and the Mask characters, original animation characters. And small role in Lilo and Stitch. Yep. I remember that character. I do a continuing character in a series of films called Swan Princess, which is sort of like an animated series. I think there's been about 10 films done where I voice Speed the Turtle, a minor comedic character. But because I've done him for so long, Speed's very locked into my mind, etc. So not everything I remember is anime based, of course, because I do other kinds of work. I've done audiobooks and commercials and narration, and pretty much everything, and a lot of live action dubbing for films and documentaries, etc.
Well, based off of what you were saying in your answer there, what do you think is the darkest headspace you've had to go for a character?
It may have been in looping, in film. I can't recall the film, but I can remember being a killer, being a murderer. And that's when you're not by nature particularly violent, when your nature is to try to find negotiable solutions to conflict. That's a dark place to go to. When that's not your natural go-to, that's a place you want to avoid. And I've had to do that. And that is difficult. But what I found, if you try to, in doing research in the psychology of psychotic people and whatever, those types of minds, we tend to think of them as these overexcited, over the top, I'll murder everybody. And when you view videos of interviews of these people, you find very often they're dead-eyed and locked in. They're almost monosyllabic in how they speak in some cases, or they're just dispassionate. Well, they all had to die. Yeah, well, she rejected me. The father, they had to die. They're very quiet and they justify it. And they're 100% certainty. That's almost more terrifying than the rah, 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 screaming types. So going into that kind of a character is, I find, challenging, because you've got to find that darkness in yourself. That we all have the capabilities of going into some dark aspect of our nature. We are animals, like all animals. So if we feel threatened, we're going to go for self-preservation. So anyway, when playing those kind of killers, I find that if I can think of it as, in their mind, it's self-preservation.
Yeah.
And nobody ever says, I'm the bad guy. Everybody says, I'm the hero in this movie. This is my movie, right? Everybody else is in my movie, particularly the narcissistic or egotistical types. And I think a lot of killers are of that genre, of that nature. Then it's all justified, and they're the hero, and there's a reason for all of it. So I think that in an acting sense, I think that's part of the key for finding those kind of dark characters. But those types of characters who react with bloodshed, with violence as a first reaction, I find challenging to do, since I'm very much a negotiator as a person. I'm the person who puts people in a room together and negotiates. Let's not argue. Let's, kind of the person who calms things down. So it's a challenge.
Well, you even have some cool, like anti-hero characters, like in a Rave Master.
I don't remember that one. Sorry.
Okay. Or then, or what were we going to say?
Rave Master?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I don't recall it. I don't recall the project.
Or then one of your characters in Dynasty Warriors is more of like a brash anti-hero too, Gan Ning.
Yeah. And Dynasty Warriors, I remember because I began by directing it.
Yeah.
And then transitioned. I wasn't intending to take on any characters in it. When I first started directing, I thought, oh, cool, I can cast myself. This will be great. I can get a double paycheck. And then I very quickly went, I don't want to do that. There's enough to do with the casting and directing and supervising mixes. Forget it. But in Dynasty Warriors, something happened where it was a huge cast, 65 actors or something, I think I hired originally. And either somebody didn't show up or somebody just couldn't do the role properly when they were hired. So I said, let me jump in and try to do it. So that's how I ended up getting roles in Dynasty Warriors, was just as a desperation move of, well, let me try it. And the producer would, that works. Okay, good. Thank goodness. So we won't go over budget. I'll do it. So yeah, I had a couple of characters in Dynasty Warriors, both that sort of anti-hero, hero, and also comedic character, I don't remember their names, very large guy who liked to eat, and the leader of a cult, yellow bandana or red bandana or something, who was like an ancient Asian evangelist, if you will, that's very vocally challenging because he's always high energy and whatever else. But yeah, those were fun. I love doing multi-characters in a show. The challenge being you're hoping, of course, that the audience is never going to guess it's the same person until they read the credits. That's your hope, is that they aren't going to pick you out as being those multi-characters. So that was a fun show, Dynasty. Of course, I did a number of them, directed a couple, and then the producer of that, another gentleman who's passed, Charles DeVries, brought on another gentleman as a partner, and he began to direct them after that. And now I don't know who's doing them. I think they've revamped the entire thing, and I don't know. I hear from some fans they're a little disappointed in the more modern ones. So I don't know quite what they've done, but unfortunately not involved anymore, which is a shame, because you love to carry those characters on once you've established them. It's a lot of fun if you can come back every couple of years and they play it again and you go, I remember where the placement is. Yeah, I remember him, and you fall right back into it again, which is kind of fun.
Another game series that has really great writing that you had a couple characters on was Fire Emblem.
Oh, Fire Emblem. Yeah. Which is still kind of current. I mean, hopefully there'll be more of those. But yeah, that was a nice character. Gregory, I can't, maybe you can remind me, I can't remember his name. But what was nice for me as an actor about him was the conflicts that he had, my particular character. If I'm remembering the game properly, which game that is, I believe that's the one where he is on the outs with his daughter, and he's left his kingdom, and they feel like he may have betrayed it, and he stopped fighting and joined a monastery. So that's a lot of information to play. That's a lot of stuff to have to keep inside of you when you're delivering lines, to have that history informing how you act and how you speak, and even how you react to a stranger is still going to be informed by your history, as is with all of us. Our history informs our actions moving forward. So yeah, that I enjoyed that as from an acting perspective. I enjoy those Fire Emblem shows. And as you say, there's some good writing in it too. So that's, you know, when it's not just who goes there or stop right there, that's a lot of what you do in games. But when you've got something that's more involved to deliver and that's more relationship based and whatnot, or you're trying to hide something from someone as you speak, or you're trying to probe and find out information from them, those are all more acting opportunities, which are more fun, more fun to play.
I think the first anime that kind of stole your voice in my head, though, was in Kenshin, Rurouni Kenshin.
Ah, Kenshin. That's going back a while. Yeah. I can't remember a lot of the details about Kenshin. I mean, I remember the title, but I can't remember a lot of the details. I mean, I don't even know if you gave me a character name, if I would know. You'd have to tell me about the character for me to remember.
You were the like a governor character named Okubo. He had a lot of facial hair, and then he ended up getting killed by a character that Tara Sands plays.
That Tara, I gotta speak to her. I tell you, I don't know how many times she's killed me in shows. It's gotta stop, because I'm never gonna, you know, get a sequel if she keeps killing me in anything. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't remember that one offhand. I don't recall. And the funny thing is too, is that quite often when you're working, because in anime, as I said, we don't work in groups anymore. You sometimes don't know who else is in the show while you're working. A fun thing is if the other actor you have a scene with has already been recorded, that's great, because then you can play off what you hear. And that's kind of a fun game, is to hear the voice and go, wait, is that so-and-so, so-and-so? And they go, yeah, cool, great. It's fun to kind of play guess the voice, you know, if you can. I can't do it as much with the younger actors now, because I haven't worked with them as often. And because I stopped directing a while back, I haven't even physically met some of the younger actors, so I'm not as familiar with their voices. But anyway, yeah, I know the title is a popular one.
Do you have much affinity with your character in Blaze Blue?
Blaze Blue. I'm trying to visualize that character.
It's the werewolf butler.
Oh, yeah. Well, butlers are always kind of fun, maybe. I don't know. Maybe it's because I was raised in Canada, where we got a lot of British influx. Our culture had a lot of Britain in it. So I saw a great many British films, you see. And quite often there were butlers, of course. And usually in a film, the butler has more of a role than simply to serve tea. You know, the butler did it is sort of a famous old saying. You know, it turns out the murder was done by the butler. So butlers are kind of fun. It kind of culturally speaks to me. So, and certainly a butler who becomes a werewolf is not your usual butler. I would recommend anybody hiring a butler, make sure that that's on the, check the resume, and make sure that they don't have to have full moon days off, because then there might be something suspect about them. You may want to investigate a little further. And if you see a lot of stray hairs and they don't own a dog, suspicious. But yeah, I like butlers, and Hessling was a butler too. But yeah, it's kind of, they're fun roles.
Well, this is the character in Blaze Blue.
Yes, I remember him. I remember the face. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, he was very distinguished looking, very distinct looking. But you remember funny? I remember doing what is that? Christmas Carol is a famous old story about Ebenezer Scrooge and da 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 da. Da. And it's available on YouTube, but I can't remember what the name of the company was. But they did a very skewed, dark version of that, and I played Ebenezer Scrooge. So you know, things are coming when you're talking about anime or dubbing or whatever. I loved doing that role, but it's a very odd film, or two anime. I guess they're half hours. Of Ebenezer Scrooge, but that picture reminded me of him.
Okay.
A little bit. But again, yeah, it's more the acting roles that I tend to remember, as opposed to whether the titles were big or not. You never know what's going to implode or explode. When I did a teeny role, I was looping on Lilo and Stitch, and we were actually doing the scratch track, which is the basic track. Yes. That's then going to be usually replaced. And it was because they hadn't finished animating it yet. So some of what we did over at Disney was to drawings, not to the finished product. I thought, okay, fine, I'll get a paycheck, but I won't be in it. When they finally finished everything, they looked at it and listened to what we'd done and went, you know, we don't need to replace these two minor characters. We like what they did in the scratch track. So suddenly I was in the film unexpectedly. So that was great. You know, residuals and whatever. There's a point to this story. Years later, two things happened. They did a Lilo and Stitch cartoon series on TV and brought me in to redo my character. And Disney in Florida decided to replace a ride they had, the Lilo and Stitch ride. And the scene they were replicating was the scene that I was in. I was only in the one scene in the film where the little character, I think that's Stitch, I think it's the character, Lilo is the little girl. Stitch is about to leave the ship, be sent off the ship or escape the ship. And I'm a little captain character, whatever. So anyway, they hired me for the game, and I made a good amount of money voicing my one little scene. It was even bigger in the ride than it was in the film. So again, it's like you do little things and you have no idea, like with Psycho Mantis, that years later, you're going to be doing car commercials or rides or whatever else on these things. It's a strange business. And then things you do that you think, oh, this is really cool. This is great. And then nobody ever hears of it. Gone. Disappear.
Well, sort of related to that, there's probably multiple instances, but if there's a single one you could pick where you had to alter your voice the most significantly for a role?
Well, certainly Psycho Mantis, I had to alter it. I can't remember what shows it was, but back when we were all kind of starting in the 80s, we were all trying to find ways to vary our voice. And we were listening to it, I think, Inspector Gadget. And I believe it was Frank Welker, the great Frank Welker, had an evil character on it. Who spoke a little like that. I can't do it as much as I used to. Now it burns my throat. But back then in my 30s, I was able to master that where I could do it for great amounts of time. So that character was certainly one. And I ended up doing him or variations of him as monsters or speaking roles in some cases, but quite often as monsters in a lot of different TV shows. There were two TV shows and anime. There were two TV shows in the 90s called Hercules, The Legendary Journeys, and Xena.
Yep.
Now, those two TV shows, my group did all the voices for. This is when I was looping, providing voices for TV shows and films. So we were every villager in the show, every actor who had a New Zealand accent, we replaced, and we were also every monster in the show. So a lot of those were very vocally challenging and where I really had to change my voice a lot. Oh gosh, there's another one too. Dave Mello did a great job on, was it JoJo? I can't remember now. JoJo. But again, it was monster voices. And I don't know if it was JoJo or if I'm remembering something else, but anyway, I'd say monster voices are the most challenging. To place them in a place where you don't burn yourself out. You've got 4 hours worth of work to do. You better not burn out in the first half hour and lose your voice. So placement the dynamics of using your diaphragm and not tightening your throat. There's a lot involved, like singers do. There's a lot involved with certain voices that is physically challenging.
I know most recently you got to be a main character in a really highly regarded anime on Netflix, SuperCrooks.
Oh yeah, that was really cool. Yeah, that particular studio in town has been using me quite a bit, which has been great. So I kind of get brought in, either audition or just get cast in a lot of the over 60 characters, male characters. That was one I believe for SuperCrooks I did audition for, but they were kind of rooting for me, which was really cool. And then the director was somebody I hadn't worked with before, and we got along really well, and he was enthused with my interpretation of the character. So we had a lot of fun. And he was also very open to a little bit of rewrite. Because I was older than him, and my character in that show in particular is kind of living in the past. Mm-hmm. If you recall, he's bragging and he's showing newspaper clippings to these younger people saying, if you do everything right, you could get your name in the newspaper. Like, that's the biggest thing in his mind, because, growing up in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and he probably doesn't even quite grasp the internet, et cetera, et cetera. So he wanted him to have that persona where a lot of his references would be older ones. So it was fun for me because I got to contribute. Once in a while. I'd be doing a line and I'd say, what about, and I'd change something a little bit and maybe put in a reference, and he'd go, yeah, that's in sync, and that really works for him. So that was a lot of fun. When you get a director who doesn't feel threatened, there has to be time, and it has to be the right project. There's projects where like anime in particular, quite often has to be word for word, mm-hmm. because that's what the producers, they wanted as close to the original Japanese as possible. But when you get a little bit of latitude and the director wants your creative input, obviously that's a lot of fun. So SuperCrooks was a fun show to do. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed that. Yeah, he was a fun character. And there was folks I know on it too, which was fun to hear them in the headset.
Yeah. And well, there's a lot of similar people in Shaman King too. In that.
I don't remember if I'm in Shaman King or not. I might have been.
You play the old man, like the grandfather character of the main character.
Ah, okay. I don't know why, but I'm playing a lot of grandfathers lately. I can't imagine what the reason is, but I am playing a lot of either evil or wise grandfathers these days for some reason. I don't know why people see me that way as opposed to the 20-year-old hero, but what can you do? Just a perception they seem to have of me. I don't know where it comes from. But yeah, I remember the title. I don't remember him specifically, Shaman King. But I know on the Crooks showed, like I'm listening in the headset, I go, Bo Billingsley, oh, so-and-so, a lot of names that I knew. Bo was somebody I directed in the early days that I introduced to Kevin Seymour. And Bo kind of, became a regular on Kevin's projects and then kind of an icon in the business. So it's kind of fun when you had a hand in helping some of these actors earlier in their career where you're one of the contributors, like Steve Bloom. I knew Steve before he was a voice actor, when he was working a 9 to 5, trying to break into voice acting. And like there's a cartoon I did, it had Steve Bloom, it had Eddie Frierson, the late Bob Pappenbrook, Bryce's dad, Edie Merman, Joyce Kurtz. I hope I haven't left anybody out in that cast, but it was a wonderful show called Inspector Mouse, mm-hmm. Illustrated by a gentleman named Ralph Steadman, who Ralph Steadman was a very famous British illustrator. Anyway, went nowhere. The English version went nowhere, and we had so much fun, and it's such a great cast in the show. But this is what happens sometimes: is things that you expect will become massive and make your name end up sinking. I once directed an original animation cartoon based on the Marx Brothers. Oh. And I thought, this is going to be great. They're backing this up, and we got the Marx Brothers family's blessing. Frank, I've forgotten his last name, the gentleman who does Groucho Marx on stage around the world was our Groucho, etc. Well, it turns out they didn't get a complete clearance from the Chico Marx family, and it got boomed. You know, after we'd recorded 2 or 3 of them, it just got the rug pulled out from under it. So things that you think, oh, this is going to be huge. This is going to make network TV, and I'm directing it. Wow, and I cast it. This is going to be great. Cam Clark was in it, and some other wonderful performers. Jen Rapson played Chico. You know, we had a great cast. But anyway, you never know. You never know what's going to hit.
And talking about people again, are you still close at all with Mari Devin, or were you?
Well, Mari has left LA as far as I know. I believe Mari's moved back to New York.
Yeah.
But I knew Mari. Yeah, certainly I cast Mari. I had done I was directing some early games, and I think she did Where in the USA is Carmen Sandiego.
Right.
I believe that was Mari that I cast in that. But I used to cast Mari, and then I'd work with her, you know, as both as performers, you know, for other people as well. I last saw Mari about I think it was just before the pandemic, about 3 years ago in a studio here in town. And we were chatting 3 or 4 years ago. And I'd see her at parties sometimes. We used to have an annual Oscar party that Steve Kramer and his wife would hold. And that was a chance to see folks that I'd known for many, many years. Obviously, the pandemic has put an end to that. But I hadn't seen Mari in about 4 years, I think. We were both working on different projects, but at the same studio. Mm-hmm. And we're just chatting in the break room last time I saw her.
I know, I think Laura Cody still works.
I believe so. I haven't seen Laura in a while. Her daughter just graduated university. But Laura I knew primarily from looping. Laura did a little bit of dubbing like Cam Clark did. At the beginning in the 80s, I think they did some. I don't know if how much they kept up on it. I think Cam does still occasionally. But they partnered up and formed a loop group, doing, again, voices for TV shows and films. And they were quite successful at that. So I used to work for them as a looper. So yeah, I know Laura. You know, I haven't seen her in a while now, but used to go to her home occasionally for a party or whatever. Same with Cam. And her husband is a Canadian.
Yep.
A singer.
Sheriff, yeah.
Yeah, from Sheriff, yeah. Wonderful. Very nice guy. Very nice guy. I haven't seen them in ages. The last time I saw them, her daughter was just about 8 or 9 years old, 10 years old. And so it's been quite a while. Sorry, go ahead.
Just another person I've found that a lot of people have funny stories about is Brienne Siddall.
Oh, Brienne. Yeah, she's a character. Brienne's a real character with her tortoises. For a while, I had my ex and I had tortoises in our yard, so Brienne really related to that well. Yeah, Brienne's a real character. But I have a great story about Brienne. I was asked, it was a looping job, and there was a very complex young character. They wanted a kid for the role. And I don't know why I couldn't get a real kid for it. I can't recall. But it was a demanding role. Maybe it was like cartoon-like or whatever. I don't remember what the story was, why I couldn't. But they said, what we do not want is a woman. We are so sick of women coming in saying they do little boy sound voices, and they don't sound like little boys. They sound like women doing it. You know, it can work in a cartoon, and it can work in the background of a film, but this is right out front in a movie. I think it was live action, and it can't be done. Well, I looked at the role. It was a little tomboy or something. I said, it's Brienne Siddall. Mm-hmm. It's Brienne. She would be dynamite, but they're not going to let me do it. So I thought, I'm going to take a chance. So I called her up. I said, I want you to call them. Tell them your name is Brienne Siddall. It's all on me. I know I'm asking you to lie, white lie, but it's all on me. You tell them, Doug, you know, once they find out who you really are, you tell them Doug told you to do it. I'll take all the heat. But I really think they need to hear you and speak to you because you're perfect for this. So she was a little nervous, but she called them up and said, hi, I'm Brienne Siddall. Her natural voice sounds like a little boy.
Yeah.
And she's a tomboy. she's all about that kind of energy. So she called up and they spoke to her and they gave her a few lines. They called me back and they said, he is great. Oh, he's terrific. We knew you could find a little guy who could do it. You see that, Brian? And he's smart as a whip. You know, he took direction from the, okay, now guys, I got to confess to you. And, you know, if you want to be mad at me, be mad. Don't be mad at her. I made her call. That is at that time, you know, 38-year-old woman named Brienne. They would, no. Yeah. So, you know, please cast aside all prejudice. Base it on performance. She's a woman who does sound like a little boy and can be with other little boys in a room, because I've hired her on projects where I had to hire kids, but I wanted to have one mature person to kind of help keep the kids corralled. And I would hire Brienne for that. And she'd be with the boys and you couldn't. So anyway, they hired her and they called back and said, she was great. Delivered a terrific performance. You know, you found the one woman that we could believe in. So, you know, everything's cool. We're not mad at you. We're thrilled with her performance or whatever. So yeah. That's Brienne. Sounds like a little boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, she's a character.
And several other people I've asked as well. They had since she passed, they had nice tribute stories about a Felice sampler.
I didn't know Felice very well. I worked with her a couple of times. I know she was very beloved. Yeah, very beloved by the people who knew her. So I feel like it's a pity that I didn't know her better. I wish I had, because obviously she was a very nice person. But I only worked with Felice a few times in the late 80s, towards the beginning of my dubbing. I don't know if I hired her or if we were just in shows together, but we only crossed paths a few times.
Okay.
And that was it. That was it. Yeah, so I didn't know her real well. There's a casting person that you're bringing into mind, Bridgette Hoffman. I don't know if you know who Bridgette was. Okay, well, she was a casting person who passed as well, who I knew better and had a really nice relationship with. But anyway, no, I did not know Felice super well. A lot of the men, like the late Bob Pappenbrook and other guys, we were kind of schooled in those things from our anime and whatever. I used to do the early Jackie Chan pictures. When Jackie Chan pictures first came over, my client was Golden Harvest Pictures, and we dubbed some of those. So anyway, there weren't as many women, in other words, is what I'm trying to get at, who could really master the fight secret, who could look at a scene and go, got it. And then boom, 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 catch every blow and punch, you know, and have a big, strong voice. But Melody is one of those people who can do all that. So she was invaluable in that kind of work. But yeah, I'm sure that in the case of anime, there aren't as many deep-voiced women, as she says, as there once were. Mm-hmm. As I say, we just worked a game, which I signed a non-disclosure on, but we just worked a game where there was a lot of, as happens in games, a lot of fighting. And Melody they wisely cast Melody in that.
Mm-hmm. So is there anything else that's upcoming that you're part of that you can safely talk about? Or
oh gosh. Hold on one second. So let's go back and see. Okay, Eureka Z, I recently worked on. Tokyo 24th Ward. These are things that I'm pretty sure that I can talk about, that enough time's gone by. Something called 86, which was done with Bang Zoom.
Yeah, that was Ezra Weiss.
Right, with Ezra. Wrong Side of the Tracks. I think that was a live action dub. This was live action with Greg Snagoff directing me, actually, recently. Kingdom S3. I have to look back at my book to remember all these things, because hard to remember. So I'm not really sure what's airing right now, because, as I say, for me, it's the process more than anything else. One thing that we did do recently, I'm going to segue here. You can see my shirt. I'm going to segue to that one thing I did do recently, which was very successful. I sit on the board of a cat rescue here in Los Angeles. I volunteer and sit on the board of a cat rescue. And sitting on the board means I also want to help with fundraising for our rescue. We rescue street kitties. So we recently had our 12th anniversary show. I used to do comedy for a living. When I first started, I did a lot of stage comedy, and I did some in here in the US and LA. So I know some of the comics. Anyway, we had Catherine Hahn was one of our headliners. Kirsten Bangs Ness was one of our headliners, and a bunch of stand-ups. We raised $26,000. And in the fall, I'll be doing the second, I guess the third voice. Ties into our conversation. I get anime and cartoon actors and whatever to donate swag, like Michael Bell and others will donate, Steve Bloom and Richard and Ellen, Lex and Sandy Fox, who are big animal lovers. They do a lot of dog rescue. I get all these folks to donate swag to Kitty Bungalow, and we do an online auction of autographed photos, et cetera, with all, we've been calling it Voices for the Voiceless. And all the monies go to our 100% no-kill cat rescue. So anyone watching this, anime fans, please keep your eyes open in around September, October. If you look up Kitty Bungalow, it's the Kitty Bungalow Charm School for Wayward Cats. If you look up Kitty Bungalow online and look at events towards the end of the summer, you should see the Voices for the Voiceless. It may have a different name by then, but you'll be able to tell it's an auction of items for that are anime actors, et cetera, and all of that. So you're doing a double bang. You're getting something that you like from some of these actors kind of after the conventions end in the summer, and at the same time you are supporting animal rescue. Mm-hmm. So you're doing a good deed while you're pleasing yourself, and getting a collectible that you enjoy. And you're helping save an animal's life at the same time. So wanted to get that out there.
Okay. Well, my final question is always asking, what do you want your legacy to be?
Oh my goodness. That Charlize Theron, that I was the greatest lover that she ever had in her life. Unfortunately, I've never met her. She is not answering any of my psychic messages. So I don't know if that's I guess that's not going to be the legacy. Legacy, I don't know. It's a good, I thought about that. I do believe that the deeds we do ripple. So on the acting side, I hope I'm remembered as a consummate professional who, came in on time, did the job, was easy to work with. Hopefully I'll be missed. And they'll say, "Oh, that Doug Stone, man, he was cool. He was fun to work with." And by my contemporaries, perhaps more importantly, I hope they'll say, "Doug Stone was always nice to me. Doug Stone helped me out. Doug Stone recommended me to so and so, and that really helped my career." Or Doug Stone did this, or I adopted an animal from that shelter that he does stuff. Hopefully, I'll be remembered in a compassionate way as hopefully being a nice person, hopefully being a compassionate person. That's I believe that we send out ripples, or have the power to send out ripples in our lives by our deeds, our actions do that. Our performances do it. There's people still watching cartoons that I did in the 80s. I get approached by people at conventions who will say, "I watched that Mask cartoon you did in the 80s, and I played a single dad raising his child." And they'll say, "I was a 6-year-old boy in a broken home, and Matt Tracker, the character you played, became my surrogate dad." Mm-hmm. And it almost brings me to tears. And you realize the work you do has repercussions that you may not be aware of. And it can have a very positive effect on people. So I guess that's the legacy I'm hoping for. I hope that when I've passed, that people remember me in a kind way and say, he did have some effect on some lives in a positive way through his performances and through his work, his charity work, and just hopefully how I treat people. Mm-hmm. I guess that would be it. And for being much taller than I actually am. And again, that Charlize thing, if you happen to be interviewing her, you could mention perhaps if she likes father types. It's my go-to joke. She's too young for me, but it's just my go-to.
Well, I can just say, based off your answer, a long time ago when I was discovering LGBT anime, because I'm gay, and I didn't feel comfortable with that until I saw that portrayed in anime, and that just really cemented it for me. So I just wanted to thank you. I told this to Terrence too. Thank you guys for being part of Fake.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. If we can, again, I hate bullying. I hate racism. I hate prejudice of all kinds, which obviously includes sexuality, race, language, religion, all of it. I hate bullies with a passion and bullying with a passion. So if anything I do makes people feel better about themselves and more accepting of who they are, and that to understand that their essence is about how they act and treat other people and how you act in the world. That's who you are and what you are. Your sexuality, your religion, your race, your color, those are all just extras. You know, those are just byproducts of who you are, but it's all about the essence of who you are and the light that's in you. So if we can, if anything I've ever done helps waken anybody to that, makes them feel better about themselves, or makes them feel like, hey, I'm not alone. I'm not alone in this. I'm not alone in my depression, or, you know, whatever it is they're going through, then I'm very happy. I'm very happy to hear that. And yeah, that makes me feel good. So thank you for sharing that with me. I appreciate it. I can remember my stepson came out, and he wasn't sure how, I don't know if he's a complex guy, but anyway, many years ago, he came out to my ex and I, and he wasn't sure what to expect. And we went, oh, we didn't know. Maybe that's why you're having so many problems. Oh, wonderful. You've self-discovered something, and now you're sharing. Oh, that's great. And he was like, oh, cool. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah, of course. You know, all we care about is that you're happy. All we care about is that you are accepting and self-loving, and that you find love. Have you met anybody? Is there a special guy in your life? You know, so that's really where, yeah, that's what it's about. It's just about love, and it's about compassion, and about caring, and yeah. So anyway, yeah, good.
Well, thank you. I'm glad that we got to do this.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Oh.
Send me the link when you're, I don't know when you air this, but or if we're live, I have no idea. I didn't ask. But do you tape these and then air them later?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, send me the link, and I'm only on Facebook. I'm not a social media guy, but I'll throw it up there at least anyway. So
okay, great. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Bye.
Okay. As Ringo says, peace and out.